What's up, guys? Hope you're feeling alive right now. I'm Mikey Canale.
I'm Josiah Kennelly. Listen, we're the hosts of this Young Adults Today podcast where we have conversations around the faith of the next generation. Let's reach young adults in our world today. And thanks for subscribing. Thanks for
Mhm.
sharing this content with others. It helps the message of Jesus and the message of young adults today go further faster. And we're joined today by our friend, Pastor Reba Gray. How are you today, Reba?
I'm doing great.
We are so thrilled to have you. It's always fun to have another female on this conversation that's in leadership that God has anointed and appointed for such a time as this, like those Esther moments that we just get to lean into as a community, as pastors, as leaders, as supporters of the next generation. And just for the person who may not know who you are yet, Pastor Reba, we would love for you just to do a little recap of your life, your journey. How did you get to where you are? And just take us on a little journey for a minute or two.
Oh man. Well, my husband and I are here in Alexandria, Minnesota. We are leading Reach Church, and it all started back in northern Minnesota. I grew up in a pastor's family. I actually come from a line of pastors. My grandparents were both pastors, and however, I grew up in the Lutheran denomination, which is a great denomination. They have their strengths. But the thing that was missing was that active work of the Holy Spirit. And when I was 10 years old, my parents attended a conference and were filled with the Holy Spirit. And then that trickled down into us kids and myself. And I remember that that's really where my transformation in my relationship with Christ changed and became very real to me. Before, it was just, that's what I did. I mean, you don't know anything different. But it was a lot of just do's and don'ts. And there was a lot of expectation and pressure put on my family and myself as a kid and just not knowing any different. And while that was amazing, it didn't necessarily stop the pain and heartache of church hurt and of people being flawed, and went through a lot of difficult seasons as a family, and ended up, long story short, my dad ended up leaving as a pastor in the ministry. And I had pretty much been set on, God, I love you, and I'm not walking away from you, but your people, I'm not sure how I feel about them. And really wrestled through just church in general, and had a lot of bitterness. My dad ended up passing away when I was 18, the day before I was about to move to go to school at North Central as a freshman. And that really rocked my world. And most of your listeners probably know that North Central is an Assemblies of God church or school, affiliated school. And I'd never even heard of Assemblies of God before going to North Central. And then I realized, like, wow, this is a whole world. And I was just thrown right into it. And it was exactly what I needed at that time. And just God met me there, both in the chapel services and his spirit, but also just the people that he surrounded me with. And I went into it. I loved music, had a passion for it, but didn't think I could make any money in music. But I felt like God was calling me to it. So I said, okay, fine, I'll do music, but I'm not going to do ministry. And that lasted a semester. And then I changed my major to music pastor. So I got my degree in that. And I have a heart for just music and how that can just touch our souls and connect us to God in a whole different level. So I've worked for several churches as leading worship and doing music, and I love doing that, but it's definitely there's aspects to that role that make it very difficult for me as a creative person to maintain for an extended period of time. So it's been really fun for me to work with my husband, and we've transitioned 4.5 years ago to him being a lead pastor, and just to see him thrive in that role and then be able to just come alongside him and support him and bring my own personality, my own giftings to balance him out a little bit and supplement those areas that he's weak and I'm strong, and that kind of a thing. It's been really fun. I've been able to explore the different areas of ministry and young adults I did not see coming, to be honest with you. It was kind of one of those things where there was a need and I kind of had a heart and a vision for it. But I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. This is very uncharted territory, but said, okay, well, and I kind of figured it would be like a short-term type of thing. But the longer I've done it, I've just grown such a bigger heart for it and more excited. And it has just blown up our church. And our young adults are incredible. And I just feel so unbelievably blessed that I was chosen to be a part of this, that I get to just kind of watch as they thrive and have taken this ministry and this community and really impacted our church and our community. It's been awesome.
My goodness, it's so fun to watch you and Nick pastor side by side as you lead Reach, amazing church in Alexandria. And we've been there to young adults. It's also fun because our paths cross, at least mine did with you guys. I think it was a 1:15 Monday, Wednesday, Friday class at North Central, possibly Dr. Tennyson's, one of his classes, if I remember right. But just so fun to see friends in ministry leading together, doing an amazing work. And side note, all young adults are invited May 12th through the 14th. If you're listening, if you're leading a young adult ministry or a young adult listening, and you want to come with us to the weekend, we'll be in Reba City, actually at Geneva, May 12th through the 14th. There's still time to get signed up at Young Adults today. Click on the events and then the weekend. We'd love to see you join us. But I also love that you guys have created space intentionally to cultivate community among young adults. And sometimes sometimes that's an overlooked demographic that can sometimes sadly be just misunderstood or overstudied, underserved. And I've loved talking with you and Pastor Nick about this, but in your thoughts, I mean, just describe, maybe you said it's blown up and changed the culture of your church. Go there for a second. Talk about what is it like at Reach Church? What's the culture and what does young adult ministry look like for you guys there?
Oh my goodness. Well, we run an average of like 30 young adults on our Thursday nights when we meet. But beyond that, we've got young adults that get together regularly throughout the week. I know that there's a group that I'm pretty sure every Sunday after church, they go have lunch together. And we've got, I would say, almost a large percentage of our volunteers on Sunday mornings or on our Wednesday night youth groups are young adults. They're pouring into the kids ministry. They're greeters. They're on the worship team. They're in the youth ministry. And then they've been heading up these worship nights where on every Saturday night, they just open up the church, put music on, and they just pray for 2 hours at a time. And we've got people that are really like working in their spiritual gifts, whether that's prayer, and they're seeking the Holy Spirit for the prophetic, for healing. I mean, they're just excited. And I think it's the rest of our church notices. I mean, they're taking note of this. And I think it's raising the rest of them up to a higher standard and say like, wow, we can do this too. And they're excited and they're on board. It's been really, really fun to see them step up as leaders.
Oh, I love that. I think it's so fun and refreshing. And Josiah says this all the time. And he says the wave like generally starts in the young adult section. If you're at a sporting event, the wave starts there. And sometimes I feel like even in the church world, the wave starts with the youth and young adults, the people who are passionate, who may not have been hurt or tainted by the church like others have. And they're not letting that hold them back. They want to discover what God has for them, the plans, the purpose, functioning in the power of prayer and just tapping into that. I think is so awesome and incredible to really realize and recognize that you and your husband, what are you guys doing? You're just creating an opportunity for them to come saying, hey, here are the church keys, the church doors, like they're open to you. All they have to do is ask. And I think so many times as leaders, as young adults, we need to be reminded that we have not because we ask not. And when we have a prayer that has not yet been answered, or maybe it's never been actually verbalized or prayed out loud, it's only a thought in our head, our thoughts are great, but our prayers also have power. And I think that sometimes we speak those things out, get them out of our brains, and just start presenting them to the Lord, because something is wanting to birth inside any and all of us. And one of the biggest things we've really realized in young adult ministry, ever since we were young adults, maybe even in our youth, is the importance of community, and that doing life together, community together, Bible studies together, lunch after church. That is a form of community.
Yeah.
And when it comes to community, to know that some of the people you meet in those young adult years could be your lifelong friends, could be your next roommate, could be your future spouse, could be fill in the blank. Like, there is a relational component that we all get to, or we have to choose to bring forth, that need in our own hearts, and admit, like, wow, I am in need not only of a savior, but I'm in need of a church and a church community, and just see what God does. So Reba, I would just love to tap into, what is your heart about young adult leaders right now when it comes to the importance of community, connecting to each other, connecting to Christ, and maybe a couple approaches that you and your team have taken to help fulfill or satisfy or even set the table for some of the people in your community?
Yeah, well, consistency is super important. There's so many great things you can do here in Alexandria, and I get ideas all the time. Oh, we should go to the beach. We should go do this. And I said, that's great. But on Thursdays, we're in our church. I mean, it has to be the same place, same time.
Yep.
I rarely do anything that's outside of our church building, because for that person who maybe they've been invited a bunch of times, and then this is the first, they finally got the nerve up to come. They maybe come 10 minutes late and we're already gone. And that might have been the only opportunity they had to come. And so making sure that we're consistent with where we're meeting, when we're meeting, they always know that there's something going on. And now we've been going for about a year and a half. And maybe some of those people who haven't been around for a while or used to come, and maybe they've just kind of gotten in a rut, but now we're starting to see them come back, because they realize now we've got a reputation that we're always meeting. Whenever you're ready, you can come back. You're welcome. And we've got a great group of leaders that are, anytime there's a new person, or maybe they don't know them, right when they walk in the door, they go up to them. Hi, what's your name? My name's this. And where are you from? How long have you been here? I mean, they just really take initiative to initiate those conversations right when they first walk in. And that's been huge to create. We're not just a clique, it's not just the same people every week. And if you come, you feel really out of place, but we always have new people. And we've created a culture where everybody is welcome. Everybody is going to get talked to, and we always have 9 square in the air set up. And that's a really easy way to just be like, come and play. I don't know how to talk to you, so let's play a game. And so it creates a little bit of a barrier of the awkwardness. But that consistency has been really key. And something fun that we do is we don't do the same thing every week. So we kind of have a structure where the first Thursday of the month, we just have an activity night. So people bring their favorite board games. We'll have a Nintendo Switch set up and we'll play Just Dance, or we'll just have music going. People hang out, and it's a really non-threatening environment for maybe somebody who's not ready for the more deep messages and things like that, and they just want to try it out. This is just a time to play games. And in the summertime, we open up our big garage door and have frisbee or a bonfire going. And then the second week of the month, we do, well, now it's shifted. We used to do a message, but now we're doing sharing nights, which is new and exciting. So we have our young adults who feel like God's put a message on their heart, or share their testimony, or we have one girl that wrote a book, and she's going to share about her book and present that. And they get to just share what God's placed on their heart, give them an opportunity to use their gifts to practice. And we're all very supportive of each other. And so it can be really scary to talk to your peers, but we just cheer each other on. And we just started that last month, and we're going to do that again this month, and just get a couple people up there, share a little 15-minute message, and then we pray and we discuss. And it's been really exciting. I wasn't sure I was going to go, but people are excited. I mean, you just give them the opportunity, and they take it and run. And I've been just so impressed with the initiative that they've taken, and they've just eaten it up. It's been really exciting. So that's our second week of the month. And then the third week of the month, we do what's called our family dinner. When I first did this, I thought, well, we got to have food, but I don't have much of a budget. And my husband goes, well, just have it potluck style. And I thought, people don't want to bring food, but it has been so fun. You have those people in there that they love to cook, or they've got these family recipes that they love to be able to share. And it's been so fun for people to show off their little dishes and things. And we usually have a kind of a theme going into it, whether it's Mexican and tacos or pasta night, things like that. So you kind of have a palette to work with. And then we like to bring in somebody from our church, usually the older generation, to share their testimony. So this provides an opportunity for our young adults to connect with the rest of our church, as well as the rest of our church to connect with our young adults, that they may see on a Sunday, but they don't know their name or don't know how to talk to them. And then we've had opportunities for people to make mentorships out of those nights, out of those testimony nights, or just have somebody that, hey, I saw you on Thursday, thank you for sharing, and just have those connecting points on Sunday where it bridges that gap for all the generations. So that's been awesome. And then the last week of the month, we use small groups. So we use Right Now Media, and we put on a video series, kind of a Bible study, and then we just get into smaller groups and talk about it, and we discuss. And that's really where you see a lot of those opening up conversations happen, and people growing deeper with each other and having those spiritual conversations in more intimate setting. So
yes.
Oh my goodness. I think that you hit on so many things, Reba, that maybe a young leader listening is like, where do I start? Oh my gosh, Right Now Media is an incredible resource. I think that that's a great place to start, especially if you're still honing teaching, or maybe you feel like, I'm not a teacher, but I'm a gatherer. I can cultivate a community, but I need somebody to bring the word consistently. That's a great way. We've used those in our home, in groups that we've had others lead. Right Now Media is great. I think of just potluck. If you feed them, they will come, and their buy-in goes up when they're responsible for helping feed others. And I mean, you talk about just the power of testimony. We overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. So many thoughts. And I know, Micah, you had talked about the waves starting in the student section. And I think of just both, I hear this from young adults a lot, that they're lonely, or they're looking for community, or it's like, oh my gosh, I thought I was going to have all this free time, but now I work 9 to 5 and it's hard to go out, or it's hard to meet people. And I would say to anyone listening that you might need to become a person of the first move, because this is one of my core values. Like, a few years back, we switched churches, and I went from being on staff at a church where I noticed anyone visiting for the first time, to we went and half the people, if not more than half, didn't know who I was. And it's that focus of being anonymous. And we go to some places where it's like, oh man, these are our tribe, these are our people, this is a conference that feels like family. And then sometimes we're invited in as outside guests, and it's like, we're going to help other people feel at home because we don't feel at home ourselves. Like, we've had enough of those experiences. In fact, I was talking to an organizational leader this week, and he's part of the AG. So we saw him at CMN, the Church Multiplication Network conference. And he goes, oh, that's my tribe. Those are my people. I knew 100% of the people. There's like 2,000 people. He went last week to ARC, the Association of Related Churches. And he was there for something. He goes, Josiah, I didn't know anyone. He goes, and this was a wake-up call to me of how people feel coming on Sundays, not knowing a soul. And I think it's good for us as pastors or leaders to put the shoes on the other feet, to try on what's it like to be on the other side of me. Maybe I'm an insider, so I don't have eyes to think about what's it like to be an outsider. And that's where church visits are so good. But I'll go full circle, close the loop for a second, and say this. Becoming a person of the first move, what that's meant for me, anyone I've talked to at our church, they love it. Their favorite subject is them. Their favorite sound is their name. And I get those quotes from Dale Carnegie, How to Win Friends and Influence People. But it's true. Everyone loves it when you remember their name. Everyone loves talking about themselves, but they're waiting for someone else to ask them the question or initiate. So as leaders, or as a listener, or as a viewer, I would just really challenge you today to say, become a person of the first move. Where do I see this in scripture? Lydia. Lydia's story is remarkable. She was a dealer in the purple cloth. She had a gathering of people, and it's like the New Testament church goes to start things up, and she receives Jesus, and immediately it says she opened up her home, and that's where a church was planted, started. You could argue she had the gift of apostolic ministry and the gift of hospitality, but why should we be a people of the purple cloth? It's because we're hospitable because Jesus invited us into his family.
Yeah.
We can pull up the chairs for others, but I'm passionate about this.
Yeah.
And I think that it's really easy for a leader even to say, oh man, I don't have any friends outside of my church. Become a person of the first move. I'm fanatical about it because you've got to create it for yourself and you've got to create it for others. And when you do that, other people end up saying thank you because they're looking for the same thing themselves.
That's good.
Well, to take off of that, my husband talks a lot about, when you invite somebody who's not a Christian to a service or to something that's a Christian event, you see things differently. You want to make sure that person feels comfortable, and it's so easy to get comfortable with what we know, and you do the same thing every week, the same people, how the service is going to go, where to go and all of these things. But as soon as you bring somebody that's not comfortable in that, now you're like, oh, I hope that this person gets talked to. I hope somebody welcomes them. I hope somebody sits by them. I hope somebody invites them to this. And, it just gives you that perspective of not only when you're a new person, but when you're bringing somebody that's new or maybe doesn't know the Lord, and you see things totally different.
Yeah. It reminds me of the movie or the show called Undercover Boss.
Yeah, exactly.
Where the boss goes in dressed up so like a hillbilly, or they have like this crazy hairdo, or like they don't even look like themselves, and nobody knows it's the boss who's actually the owner of this chain or this restaurant or business or facility or whatever. And they begin to see the ins and the outs and the dysfunction of how this is being managed under the franchise name that they have started. And I think sometimes even as church leaders, I mean, we're not the owners of the church, but God has appointed us for a time to be those people to really uncover and discover what is it like to be the person who's not yet part of the community, and is there a place for them at the seat? And if so, do we have on-ramps, programs, events, people in place, volunteers in place, whatever that is, a friendly face that they can sit next to? And building community, that's a make it or break it for many people. I can't tell you how many times I've run into young adults who I see in the parking lot, or I had to go run out and grab something. I see somebody sitting in their car and I wave to them. Then they finally get out and they're like, this is the first time the last 6 weeks that I've actually gotten out of my car, because I've driven away the last 5. And the only reason why I got out is because you saw me. Oh my gosh. So and these people are closer to 30 than they are 20 sometimes. So you're like, wow, what are we doing, or what are we not doing to lure and they're believers, or like they're wanting to experience that, but let alone how much more aware do we need to become for the non-believer, and making room for questions, topics of conversation, discussions that maybe we don't have the answers to, but we're able and willing to admit, I don't know, but I'd love to come alongside you. Why don't you attend our Bible study, and let's unpack this in the next series that we're talking about, because that's exactly what it's going to be. So being mindful and aware of leaders of what's taking place in the ministry. I can't know everything, but to know, are we leading the people well to build a community that anybody can be a part of and feel loved, cherished, seen, and to know that they can ask something and not get kicked out the doors. So,
and part of the pushback sometimes against the idea of even young adult ministry as a whole, and I think you can speak to this in such a powerful way, Reba, but sometimes people will say, well, we don't want another program, or we don't want a church within a church, or we don't want siloed ministries. And already you've touched on some of the themes that you guys have young adults who are serving in every other, it's changed the culture of your church. But for the person who's maybe a little bit fearful, but they're listening, and they have a burden to reach young adults, but they're just maybe fearful of a church within a church, or a siloed ministry, or a program versus personal relationships. Can you weigh in on that?
Well, going into it, I very intentionally don't have certain things a part of our Thursday nights. We don't do worship. And I know a lot of people love that. And so then I get to say, I want you leaving wanting more,
Yeah.
And
That's
so
cool.
come on Sunday where we have worship, or come on our prayer and worship nights once a month as a church. And so leaving some of those areas out so that people have to work a little bit harder or they don't just get everything they want on a Thursday and think, okay, I'm good. I don't need to connect to the local church. It helps that my husband's the pastor and I'm on staff, because I do get to see the whole picture. I think getting that staff and that pastoral leadership involved, whether you're the leader that's on staff or whether you have somebody in the pastoral staff that you're accountable to, that you're connecting with, in order to encourage your young adults to also get connected on those Sundays. But we don't have a message every week. We don't have, we talk about how, our goal for our young adults nights are for you to build relationships with other people in your similar stage of life, and also to build your relationship with God too. But communicating that, I think it's like, okay, we're not just here to soak it all up and this is our time. I mean, it is kind of, but they're keeping that bigger picture in mind for them, and just encourage it. I mean, sometimes I announce some of the things that we're doing on Sundays. We just had baptisms, and so talking about them about, hey, if you want to get baptized, or we have these other things going on Sundays that they might want to participate in. We don't do that all the time because we do have quite a few of our young adults that go to other churches. But I would say the majority of the young adults that have come to our Thursday nights that didn't already have a church home have found their church home on Sundays at Reach. And it's been really fun to see how they've gotten more consistent on Sundays when I've seen them more consistent on Thursdays.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So it's almost the same question in reverse. And I didn't send this one to you, but it's burning in my heart and mind. Picture your church for a second at Reach and take all the young adults out of it for a second and describe that picture. What does it look like, feel like? Go there for a minute.
Well, I mean, it was there not too long ago. We've got a whole section that is kind of been almost designated as the young adult section in our church. So they love to sit together, which is great. When a new young adult comes in, they're like, hey, this would be a great place for you to sit and like meet people. But man, there would be a lot of gaps. We would be like hurting for people to pour into our youth and to our kids and even our tech and worship. I mean, it would feel like bare bones, and I think it felt like that for a long time. And so it's been just really fun to see the life that they bring by just being there. They don't always they're not serving every week, but they're there and they're excited to be there.
I love that. I think it's an encouraging thought to have. And I would say it, even if you're a leader or a lead pastor and you're listening, maybe that's how we have to start challenging elements of our thinking. If this wasn't so, what would that look like? And I think Josiah had a realization, not with young adult ministry, but there was a time when we took a break in our relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And he's like, 2.5 days in, he's like, I realized what my life would be like without you.
Yep.
Just dating, not even marriage, but just dating. And as a pastor, even as a lead pastor, if you're thinking, or somebody who's passionate about young adults but doesn't know how to implement them into the church, if you were to remove any people group or age demographic from the church, you would significantly feel it, and it would change the dichotomy and the structure and the vision, and it would leave a gaping hole, right? So I just think that's a great question, Josiah, to kind of think in reverse.
I definitely agree. Like, I remember that moment in our relationship, and sometimes it helps you zoom out and see the big picture. Reba, a second ago, you were talking about the big picture, and picture now a whole. It feels like a hit. It feels like a loss versus, and maybe somebody's like, I'm there. Now imagine what would your church look like if you added a segment of the population who was teenagers, 20-somethings, young 30s, and they were the wave, and they were energetic, and they were excited about the vision. They were getting water baptized. They were coming to these prayer and worship nights, and there was a place even in your Sunday or weekend gathering that they sit together. Like, I mean, who doesn't want that?
Yeah, that's great.
And I think that's actually we've seen, that's just probably like the last 6 months, there's almost been a discontent with the rest of our church because they see what the young adults have and like, well, I want to have that, And so because out of that longing, we now have a men's and women's ministry that are raising up. Like they're just lay leaders. They're not pastors. And they're like, we need community.
Yes.
We need us. And so we're going to just make it happen. We're not going to just sit around and complain. We're going to make a difference and make a change. So we've seen them step up and start initiating these ministries where they can too have that community. Because we've tried certain things. We told them, like, we know that you guys want community and we're trying and it's not working. And so to have them be like, okay, we're going to do this, and have them have some buy-in because they've been inspired by this young adults ministry. It's been really fun to see.
Yes. I think you're onto something. That is exactly right. Because I cannot tell you how many people that are probably in their 40s that have come to us when we've been in roles where we lead the 18 to 30-year-olds and they say, what's the actual age cap on young adults? Like, can I be a part of it? I'm not married. Or what is it actually? So there's a stirring in the hearts of people beyond 30 who may not feel like they have a place in the church at large yet, but it creates, like you said, like this discontentment of like, we got to do something. And they might be part of the prayer they've been praying, and they might be part of the process that begins to start something new, not only in the church dynamic, but in the community at large. So absolutely love that.
Yeah.
Love it. You ready?
I'm ready. Reba,
5
are
and
you up
5
for a challenge? Some of the listeners, and one of our favorite parts of the episode is just going one step deeper. It's how to get to know you a little bit better. And 5 questions. We'll put 5 minutes on the clock. Are you up for it?
Oh boy. Yes.
Okay. We'll kick it with question 1. And it doesn't need to be about community or young adult ministry or the themes that we talked about, but what's God teaching you lately?
Okay, so I'm doing the Bible in a Year plan, which has been really fun and exciting. I'm obviously still in the Old Testament, and just seeing how big God is. Growing up in church, I've had that intimacy. I've known him as a friend and as a father, but like seeing him as God and creator and all powerful in the Old Testament has been really sobering. I mean, his holiness and his perfection, I've just been like, whoa, that just really changes. I think I've gotten a bigger picture of who God is. I think I've seen him too small and personal, which is great, but also having the balance of, this is the all powerful creator God that I get to have a relationship with, and really sobering.
I love that. That's so good. Okay. Question number 2. Here's the curveball. If you could ask Josiah and myself anything under the sun, what would you ask us today?
I've been wanting to ask you this. You're both working, and Nick and I are both working. How do you balance your time with your kids, parenting, all the responsibilities? Like, are there certain things you have in place?
Yeah. Do you want to go first?
For sure. I mean, this is a passion of ours. Like we knew, I mean, even before we got married, that we were both called to ministry individually. And the dream all along was to do that together. And for a season, that was on a college campus. Before that, it was in a local church. And so there's always been the he, the she, the we, but as far as adding kids to the dynamic, our oldest is 3, our younger turns 2 in August. And it's just been a one day at a time approach, but here's some of the guardrails or things that we've filtered as our lens for saying yes or no to different commitments or opportunities. Because even a year ago, we launched a new form of ministry. So it's like, Micah says oftentimes there's a 3-year-old, a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, the 1-year-old being the ministry. But I think for us, our goal is to be at our home church more weeks or an equal number of weeks than we're away. And so we travel some, and there's different events that we're leading or we're invited to, but like we've said no to things if we're going to be gone too much. Similar, the balance point, the tipping point for us is in a given 7-day week. We had a calendar meeting this morning, and it was like, what does coverage look like for childcare, events, yada, yada. And it was like, wow, we have some travel upcoming. And so in a given week, we attempt to be home for dinner and bedtime routine more nights than we're away.
Yeah.
And so that's meant that we've had to say no to some things that are no for now, not forever. But then it's like we've structured our work week with childcare, et cetera, in a way that maybe you can speak to, Micah, but it's like when we're on, and when we're with the kids, this one's hard for me and I'm growing and this is public accountability, but I try, like this afternoon when we pick up the girls, I've got to shut off my phone and put it in a drawer or something so that I'm on with my girls.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think when they're with childcare, like Josiah said, we're on. So we have like our weekly routines, we have our list of to-dos, we have everything in order from the household priorities, and we have work priorities, but then there's also the component of how do we prioritize our family. And I think those are traditions. As pastors or leaders, like we have pizza party every Friday night. And maybe that's healthy, maybe that's unhealthy. But since COVID, we make pizza party Fridays or something fun. Sunday, we haven't been the best at this, but we're going to have a Sunday dance party as a family. And we just turn on worship music or like Michael Bublé. And the girls just go to town, run around having fun and the record player. So they just love that kind of stuff. And each year we look at our calendar as parents of like, okay, we need a family vacation.
Yep.
We need a getaway just for Josiah and myself, whether it's an overnight, and that's great. So it is really having something to look forward to as a family of 4 is something that they enjoy and something that I can say we both enjoy as well. Because if we only focus on ministry, we lose our family. If we only focus on our family, then we're losing elements of the calling or we're falling short in that way. So how do we balance those elements? It's a never ending dance, I should say. But when you find a routine and you think you get comfortable, your child gets in a new stage of life. They're sleep training, they're potty training, they're teething, they're whatever, they're going to school, they're, off to college before you know it. So I think some of those boundaries are essential with us, and we kind of stick to a weekly routine and daily routine, which really helps. And now that there's no room for flexibility, but yeah.
I love it.
Well, and one quick thought, I remember the night that we came to Alexandria, we had dinner with you guys and your family, and then Nick, he took the girls or your family, your kids, and in our context, that'd be our girls, but he was a dad. He's a parent, not a babysitter. He's a dad. And it was your night of ministry and you led the young adults. And I think that that's been a great model even for us. Like last weekend, Mike was at a women's event. I'm bringing the girls to the airport. We're watching airplanes take off and land, or we're doing different fun memories, just them and I.
Father-daughter dates, mother-daughter dates.
Similar, like she has a minister's wives thing coming up. And so it's just like anytime I can bless and send, I do, because there's probably already been more times in our marriage or in our family where the girls have blessed and sent me. So I really have been one to encourage Micah and support and say, go, like sign up or say yes, because I just think that that's so important for her to have those opportunities.
And I think the other word that I would say that we learned actually in marriage mentoring for the listener is advocating. You have to become the biggest advocate for your family, for your spouse, for your children. And I think God has given us that role. He's given us that authority in some ways that nobody else is going to raise our children. Nobody else is going to take over the ministry for the time being. And we need to be advocates for our family through the boundaries of which God is convicting us about as leaders. And it's okay to say no to an opportunity, and it's okay not to have to explain everything at the same time. So advocating is, I think, essential, because we need to advocate for one another, because nobody else is going to. It's kind of like when you write a book, like you're probably the most passionate person about that book because you wrote it. You write in this taking that same mindset, similar mindset can help not being afraid to, be a yes person 24/7. So
it's a great question.
That is.
Back to you. This is question 3. And
that was a long answer.
I know
so it's a 10-minute answer.
Our time doesn't count against your time.
Okay.
But best advice you think you've ever been given?
Well, when my dad passed away, my mom was a counselor. And so one of the things she told me, I don't know if this is exactly verbatim what she said, but like, whatever you're feeling is okay. And so I feel like I've taken that with me in lots of areas of life, but it was especially helpful in the grieving process, because there would be moments where all of a sudden out of nowhere, I'm having a meltdown because something triggers something. And your initial reaction is to, okay, pull myself together. I don't want to feel like I've got things to do. I gotta do this, or I don't want to, I'm embarrassed or whatever. But instead I would just like, let the moment be, let myself feel it, let it pass, and then move on, and not be judgy about that. Like, oh, I shouldn't feel this, or why would that make me feel this way? It's easy to think things are silly or stupid. But I'm a huge advocate. I just think people need permission to just feel things, especially negative things. We're so quick to push those away, but they don't go away unless we go through them. I don't know if you know the song about the going on a bear hunt song.
Yes,
the kids
Aurora's been singing it to me.
going on a bear hunt, and then like they come to the swamp and they say, we can't go over it, we can't go under it, we gotta go through it.
Go through
And
it. Yep.
the same with the negative emotions. It's like, you can't go over it, you can't go under it, you just have to go through it, as painful as it is. But it's much less painful, even though it might not feel like it in the moment, than if you delay that pain, and it's eventually going to come up.
Yeah.
It's just how bad will it be? So that was great advice that I was given.
That's so good. That is wonderful advice. All right, here's a fun one, hopefully for you. Question number 4. Can you tell us about one of your lifelong friendships or someone who has impacted your life?
Oh man, there's so many, but who came to my mind was my friend Gabby Leone. I don't know if you know her. She's married to Ben. Ben was my drummer on One Accord when I was on there, and she is petite, but like, you don't want to mess with her. Like, she was like, we were friends in college, and she was like my bodyguard. And it's so funny because she just does not look like it, but she's so strong. And what I love about her, because especially as pastors, it's really hard to know who can minister to you. You're always pouring out and always ministering, and those really real relationships are hard to find. And she's that person that I could just be myself, I can be totally honest with, and she'll call me out in a very loving way. And like, nobody else really like that besides my husband, who I don't like to hear that from. But she's just like, Reba, this is what I'm seeing. And she is very in tune with the Spirit. She's very prophetic. And so I always love talking to her. I feel like I leave every conversation with her either challenged and or uplifted and encouraged. And it's just invaluable. It's hard to find that as a pastor, especially.
That's great.
Wow.
That's good. That is rare.
I love that.
So take advantage of your fierce little friend.
Yes, I will. I need to call her up now.
I love that.
That's so cool. Question 5 of 5, last one. If you could leave your musical, so it doesn't need to be a singing note or a song note. I think back to North Central, by the way, and a lot of times in chapel, it was either you singing on One Accord or our other mutual friend, Steph. But if you could leave the listener with one note, one word, one piece of advice or encouragement, to lift their head, to encourage them, to help them maybe go through whatever the assignment that God has them on, what would it be?
It would be to not be afraid to be real and authentic and vulnerable. Obviously, you need to find the right person to be real and vulnerable with. You can't just go around to anybody, because you want to protect your heart as well. But James 5:16 says, therefore confess your sins to each other and pray for each other so that you may be healed. And too often we'll go to God, we'll confess our sins to God, and he'll forgive us, but we'll still carry that pain, that heartache, until you start confessing to other people is when you start getting healed. And it's scary because they could reject you. And yet, until we're allow ourselves to truly be our ugly self to somebody else that is safe, we won't truly find that healing. And we all long to be known. We all long to have somebody know our best and worst parts of us. And when you can find that person to be that way with, it truly brings you back to who you were created to be. So that's what I would encourage.
It's so good. What a great episode. What a great challenge. What a great thought to leave us on and encourage us to know that God has created you so uniquely, and it's okay. It's okay to feel your emotions. It's okay to go through them, not ignore them and stuff them. So I love that.
Yeah, the
I love
closing
it.
note for me is to the young leader or listener, viewer, that you are in,
Mm,
what you might consider a rural area. Some of the most dynamic, powerful, significant young adult ministries that we've seen
mhm,
across our state and far beyond too is just they're in Alexandria, they're in Wilmer, they're in maybe parts of the
Mhm.
state where it's not like a college town or it's not like, but there's young adults there.
mhm,
And maybe besides a church or a community, I mean, where else are you going to go for community or some semblance of it? Maybe a bar, maybe a restaurant, maybe a party scene. And so I just want to
mhm,
speak life over the person who's like, well, God's placed me here. Do I need to leave? I don't think you need to leave or go somewhere else. I think there's a need right where you're at. And
mhm,
God will use you powerfully, led by the Holy Spirit to
mhm,
minister, whether you're on this inner city streets, whether you're in the suburbs, whether you're in rural parts, there's young adults there.
mhm.
They need the love of God. They need community. And this is
Yeah.
a great conversation to just think about, what is that
Mhm.
picture of community? What do you want this community to look like? What could it do for your church? What does your church look like with it or without it? But
Yeah.
big thanks to Reba Gray for joining us.
Thank you.
This is the Young Adults Today podcast.